ahead.
Let me tell you about what happened earlier. I actually played the 12 o'clock pot limit Omaha. I liked pot limit Omaha a lot. It was 10K buy-in. It was an event I was looking forward to. And I don't have any problem playing that event, trying to get built up, even though I'm going to miss 5 or 6 hours. I've done that before and done it pretty successfully. For half of my chips, I had the nut flush draw against a smaller flush draw, and the guy in the inside wrap, and he hit it. Then I ended up more than doubling up, flopping set over set, and I had good chips. And then I played a huge pot against a guy named Jonas Enton, where he raised, I re-raised before the flop, and he called, and the flop came king, queen, 9, different suits. I bet out, and he called me. I had top set. I had kings and 5s, was my hand. And when he called, I said, oh, he's got second set here. I said, put a 9 on the turn. I'm going to be the chip leader in the tournament. Unfortunately, a queen came on the turn. And I was like dead sure, he'd have raised me right away if he had the straight and that he had second set. But I was in a position where I need to play a big pot, and I said, maybe somehow I'm lucky and he has king, queen. But I checked, and I was just trying to keep the pot small. I just was so convinced. Again, this is a thing that online is probably not so easy to know, but live, when he called me, I just said he flopped second set. It just was obvious to me. I checked. He bet. I was glad he didn't bet too much. He bet 4,000. I called, and a jack came on the river, and I was hoping he'd save me some chips, but he bet pretty big on the river, only saved me a few thousand. And I might have even folded if I was playing real seriously. I was that convinced he had 4 queens. The way he bet, he bet like he was sure he had the nuts. But there's still a chance somehow he had king, queen. Not that much of a chance, but I said, oh, what the heck? I got to play a big pot anyway. So I put the rest of it in, and I said, I even said, if I didn't have this horse tournament to play, I wouldn't be raising you here. And he called, said, I've got quads. I said, I do it, and I showed my king's 12. So that's okay. I wanted to play big pots, and flopping set over set and losing to quads gives you a bad beat story. So hopefully I got my bad beat out of the way before the horse tournament. Now, while we're waiting for Lyle to get out of his interview, he's been in there for about an hour, I think. I might as well tell you about the final table, the horse. In the 1 seat is Matt Glantz, is his name, I think? I'm looking at him right now. East Coast player. Normally the East Coast players are good at stud. Matt's played all the games. I've played mixed games with him. He's a good player. I think he's pretty even at all the games, but he's most insecure about Hold'em, not because he's weaker at it than the other games, but because generally people are stronger at Hold'em. Normally when you get a guy who's not as secure about a game, that means he's not going to bluff you that much. What happens when people first start playing games, they play value. Once they get comfortable, then they know all the raises to move people out of the pots and the bluffs and check raises and all that kind of stuff. Matt's most comfortable in in Omaha 8 or better, so then he might be creative. But in the other games, he's not that creative. But again, a good player. I don't want to take anything away from him. The 2 seats is Huck Seed. I played with Huck most of the day yesterday. He played really solidly. He got most of his chips in Raz, including beating me a big pot, and Raz is probably his best game against the field. And then the 3 seat is Patrick Bueno. He's an action player, a Frenchman. He's been the chip leader at times. The 3rd day he drew a table with me, Doyle, Phil Ivey, and Ming. And I thought he was the chip leader, and I thought he's gonna be in trouble. And he quickly went from about 600,000 down to 200,000. I didn't think he'd even last the first level. And then he started making hands, and he got back to the chip lead. He was amazing. And really, on this 4th day, the reason you're not seeing Phil Ivey at the final table is Patrick Bueno. He just tortured Phil because he was in a lot of pots. Phil played pots with him, and he was hard to bluff. He beat Phil on a hold'em hand with ace high where Phil knew he couldn't bluff him. There was a Raz pot where Phil would have tried to bluff anyone else, but was afraid Patrick would call him down. And then he beat Phil a big pot where Phil had king, queen, and Patrick had ace, queen, and the flop came queen high. And he was a real thorn in Phil's side. I did pretty well against him, and that was one of the reasons I ended up doing pretty pretty well at the end to get over average chips. And again, I didn't bluff him out. I didn't outplay him. I just outheld him, which is not a bad thing to do, especially in limit poker. The 4 seat is, I think, Lyle Berman. And Lyle plays, as you know, plays the big game. He plays all the games pretty evenly. He outplayed me on a hand where he raised and limit hold'em. I 3-bet with ace-king offsuit. He 4-bet me out of position. Now, I 3-bet Lyle, kind of normally. When he 3-bets, it's a serious matter. I would never 4-bet Lyle out of position without aces or kings. And so I gave him credit for having aces or kings against me. The flop came small. He bet the flop. And I didn't take a card off. He later told me he had ace-king offsuit also, so he outplayed me on that one. But, Lyle's a guy who's played all these games for many years, and he's certainly a good player against the field. The field's relatively weak. They're good players. It's a high buy-in event, but they're hold'em, still mostly no-limit hold'em, some pot-limit Omaha players. And so in the mixed limit games, we've got a lot of weak play, especially in the stud games. The next seed is Scotty Nguyen. Obviously a good tournament player, and some people are surprised to see him because they think of him as a no-limit hold'em player. But actually, when I first started playing in tournaments, Scotty was known as Omaha high-low and stud high-low specialist. High-low was his game. And so it's probably not that surprising with that context that he's here at the final table. He had a key pot to get here, though, against a guy named David Bach. They were in the same range. They played a real big pot where David had trip tens and Scotty had, in stud high, just had a pair and a low straight draw. I think he might have picked up a flush draw on 6. And what happened is Scotty made a straight on the river and won a huge pot to put him over $2 million. And that's Alex's phone. Don't you know, for these serious things, you got to turn the ringer off. Anyway, so Scotty won that pot, got over $2 million, and never looked back. Eventually got over $3 million. And I guess I'm next in the 6th seat. The 7th seat is Michael DiMichele. I've never played with him, but I've seen his name up in these horse events, and I've read online that he's a good player, and I guess the results say that he is. He seemed like a really nice kid. That's the most I can tell you about him. And then the 8th seat is Eric Lindgren. Eric Lindgren's the chip leader. And come on, walk with me. And Eric's just a good player. And another guy I thought was a no-limit hold'em player until I played the limit hold'em with him on the party poker cruise, I guess it was, and Eric won it, and he played great. And of course, later I came to find out that Eric had been a limit hold'em prop the first several years of his playing career. So he's played a lot of limit poker, and he's the guy that I've got to try to take the lead away from.